Start the timer.
Wow, that was a really long one. Started. 15 minutes or less.
And we are back. Part 6 of our 777 series. Or
777.
777 series. This is our second most memorable experience, I should say, in the last 7 years of being location independent. And to be fair, before we started recording here, we had a bit of a dialogue, conversation, not fight, because it wasn't. It was just debate, discussion.
Number 2 and number 1 are both very memorable. And we couldn't decide which one should be number 1.
It's like 1A and 1B.
Pretty much.
Because we'll never forget either of these, but for two distinctly different reasons. So we decided to put the one that was a little bit more of a mishap as number 2, and then the one that was a little bit more of, what would you say, like a pinnacle trip?
Yes, a pinnacle trip where, we felt like, we've kind of made it. We had a very nice, relaxing, a little bit higher end experience than our very first.
We put that as number 1.
Yeah, actually not our very first backpacking trip, but our very first trip as being location independent.
So all that is to say, we're at number 2.
Yes, we are.
And I teased this out in yesterday's episode, so if you're listening to that, this is our very first location independent trip. So our first foray into location independence. And I make the one mistake that you cannot make if you're location independent. And you can. I made it.
Yeah,
we
you
survived.
made it, of course.
But it's just a very goofy mistake. So this trip memorable for a few reasons.
Well, actually, I think you made 2 mistakes.
I did, actually. I made 2 big mistakes.
2 huge mistakes, actually.
All right, so we might as well rock into it. Now
I never make mistakes. Trav makes them a lot. No, I'm just kidding. But these were like the 2 biggest
These
ever.
are 2 big mistakes. So, memorable, I guess now for 3 reasons.
Yeah.
1, it was our first time being location independent. And then 2 and 3 were the mistakes. So, let's set the scene a little bit. We are leaving Japan. We had taught English in Japan for 2 years. As if you guys have listened to the show before, we taught English in Japan for 2 years. I had started Extra Pack of Peanuts January 1st, 2012. And then our contract was up in Japan August 2012.
Right.
So what we decided to do before going home to the United States was we had a month buffer. And we decided that, hey, okay, let's kick this off right. Let's not just go home to the U.S. from Japan. Let's take a trip. And I don't even remember how we settled on this specific trip, but...
Well, because I wanted to go to Bali. We had been to Thailand and Australia and Cambodia, and we hadn't been to Indonesia yet. So I was like, I really want to go to Bali. Our friend who had taught English in Japan with us was now teaching English in Singapore. So Trav used his mastery skills of frequent flyer miles to book like one of our probably most epic trips, where we had a stopover that was supposed to be 24 hours in Singapore.
Supposed to be. Foreshadowing.
So we left Japan to Singapore for 24 hours, then Singapore to Bali for, I don't know, a week about?
It was about a week.
And then Bali to Mumbai, India for two and a half. No.
Well, to Mumbai. Oh, for India total.
To India
3
total
weeks.
3 weeks. I'm
You
talking
said
about
Mumbai.
the airport. So yeah, we flew into Mumbai, and then Mumbai back to Japan, and then we were going to come Japan to the U.S. So this was like an epic trip, and was all booked on miles. So we're like,
and one of the first trips that I booked with miles, because I learned stopovers and open jaws and all these crazy techniques. I'm like, if we stay in Singapore 24 hours or less, it doesn't count. So let's go Singapore for a little bit. So I was very, very proud of this trip.
And I was proud of it. I was like, this is such a baller trip. We've used all of our, not all of our points, but we've used only points to book the flights. And we're going to 3 places. It felt super cool.
And of course, we're location independent. So we thought, all right, we're going to kickstart like our business kind of when we get home in the US. I'm going to go full time working for Extra Pack of Peanuts. But this is a great way to start this location independent lifestyle, because
traveling, working.
Let's see how it works, because we're going to have a month going through 3 different countries before we get home. And so we're like, all right, perfect. Let's do it. Fly to Singapore. Life is good. We hang out with our friend.
Have a great time.
Great time.
17 hours or whatever, one night.
And
the next morning we get ready, packed up, go to the airport, and we're checking in for our flight to Indonesia. And what happens, Trav?
Well, I get told by the Singapore Airlines representative that I cannot board the plane because my passport is too full. And so
Too full.
when you get to Indonesia, you need to get, so some countries, obviously, you need to get visas and you have to get different stamps and stuff when you go to that country. So Indonesia, they have to give you a visa upon arrival. And apparently you need
a visa page. It has
whole
to be
page.
A whole page with no
In your
stamps
passport.
on it. And Trav didn't have a whole open page. So Singapore Airlines said, we're not going to let you go because you'll get to Indonesia and they'll send you back to Singapore and that's on our dime. You know,
Yeah,
Singapore
they will.
Airlines will get a fee and whatever.
Yeah, they'll find the airline if the airline allows you to go to a country that you're not allowed in. And that's what they were saying. I wouldn't be allowed in because I didn't have a full visa page.
And we're like, it's Indonesia. Can't we just give somebody like $50
Right.
and they'll let us?
Having never been to Indonesia, I said to the guy at Singapore Airlines, I'm like, come on, man. You know it's going to be fine. He's like, and they would not let me on. I tried to like kind of sneak around the gate.
No, they were like, no.
They were having none of it.
So then, this is a very long story, but we only have 15 minutes total, so we have to be quick. But long story short, we had to then go to the U.S. Embassy, which fortunately Singapore is a country, but it's the size of a city. So the embassy is right there.
Yep.
We could go. We had to get new passport pages in the same day, which cost quite a bit of money and took like 3 hours or something. And we were just like, can you? And the guy was like, it might take longer, but we were like, we need it today. Then the big problem was that we had to redo our itinerary. And when you book with miles, if you miss a certain part of your itinerary, the whole rest of your trip gets canceled. Okay. And we're like 24 hours into this trip and we don't want the whole rest to be canceled.
Yeah, we have flights to Indonesia, then Indonesia to India, then India back to Japan. So missing the Singapore Airlines flight was a mess.
It was so stressful.
We had to go to Singapore Airlines headquarters in this crazy mall and basically beg and plead for them to let us on the flight the next day, but not cancel out the actual ticket. Like keep that ticket, but get us on the other flight. It involved me eventually just being very obstinate and stubborn when they kept telling me no, and going to the head of Singapore Airlines in that office and giving him money, and he's like, oh, it'll be $100 fee.
Yeah,
so I'm like, I get it.
Whatever.
Here's the fee. He gave me like a sheet of paper with numbers on it, told me to take it to the gate. They had no idea at the gate what I was talking about, but basically we just willed ourselves onto that flight the next day.
And the thing is also like yours is we had to pay for the passport and we had to pay like kind of the bribe or whatever. Still was way cheaper than actually buying tickets to all of these places because we used our points.
Right. So
maybe we were out $200.
We're 2 days into this trip and I've already gotten stuck in a country because my passport was too full and had to bribe my way onto a plane the next day. So anyway, we get to Indonesia. Don't have to tell this whole story, but it would have been very easy to get into Indonesia because when we showed up, there was a line and some guy just came up to me without me prompting. Was like, hey, you want to pay $25? You can skip this line.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
get your visa.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So I could have easily showed up with this full passport. It would have been fine.
The second huge mishap, because did you forget even about the passport mishap?
No, the passport mishap I remembered, but the bigger mishap when it comes to location independence was what happened once we landed in Indonesia and we were there for a day or two, and I look at my bag.
No, I think actually, because my memory is better than yours, you figured it out at the airport when we were in Singapore. At the airport,
the second time
when we were like knew we were going to get on the flight, and you were looking in your backpack there.
That's right.
And our friend was in the taxi going back to her apartment. She came with us to say goodbye, and you didn't have your laptop.
Right.
Your
My brand new MacBook
Pro.
The thing that we say, what do you need?
Not an Air, a MacBook Pro, which is like double the price.
What do you need to be location independent? You need internet. Of course, you need your laptop. On my very first location independent trip, I left my laptop at my friend's apartment after we had gone back. So I had it the first time. If we would have gotten that flight, would have been fine. Yeah. But when we went back, I needed to use Skype to call stuff. I left it sitting on her kitchen table
or whatever.
And so we get there. So she doesn't have time to run it back. We have to get on a Singapore Airlines flight. So we get down into Indonesia. I have no laptop. I think, okay.
Whatever. We're going to be in India for 2.5 weeks, and our friend is a U.S. diplomat there. He has an apartment and address.
Right.
So we'll just have her ship it to India. No big deal, right? I mean, it's
so already I was shirking off work in Indonesia for that week because I didn't have my laptop, and I thought, okay, not the worst place in the world. We hung out in Bali, and I didn't do any work. But I'm like, when I get to India, I'll have my laptop. We're going to be here 3 weeks. Right. I'm going to be able to bunk in, get some work done. So she ships it to my buddy's address in India. Now, he had just moved to India 3 days prior. He had never been in the country. The U.S. diplomat literally arrived. He had nothing in his apartment. It was just boxes, basically.
He had a couch and 2 beds. I mean, we had places to sleep.
Right, but he had just gotten there, so he knew nothing about India.
Yeah.
So we get there, and there's no laptop. And
at this time, maybe you're thinking, well, why didn't you just use Heather's laptop? I had an old laptop, a Toshiba, that was half broken, and I think that we might have left it in Japan. So we both didn't have MacBooks, and we didn't travel with our both MacBook Airs.
We were very frugal at this point.
We were just starting out, so we had one
laptop. As the Brits say, we were skint.
Yeah.
Right? We were skint there. And we had one laptop, and it was in, Singapore, and supposed to be going to India. Anyway, doesn't show up to India. 3 days later, we decide to leave Mumbai, and we're going to go on this trip up to Delhi and then through Rajasthan, which was an awesome, epic trip. I mean, the way to describe Rajasthan, the northwest corner of India, I just describe it, Heather, I don't know if you like this description, as being in Aladdin. Like you're in the desert, you have castles,
it's
you have
beautiful and fortresses and forts and just so many beautiful old cities. And Rajasthan is the state of India where a lot of the royal families used to live and have like their palaces. So, it's the tourist trail, but it was an amazing tourist trail to go on. And of course, we had to see the Taj Mahal in Agra, which was a few-hour drive to from Delhi. But that was that was an epic experience because
riding camels through the desert, going to Jaisalmer, almost on the border of Pakistan.
Oh my gosh, it was just such a cool trip, and it felt very exotic and fun. Like, wow, we're location independent. We're living this life. We're going through India, and it was really exciting, other than the fact that we didn't have the laptop.
We had this awesome experience, but we had no laptop.
So we weren't really working.
I kept calling my buddy and saying, hey, or like emailing him, has this ever come in? And he kept saying, no, it hasn't shown up yet. So we work our way 3 weeks around Rajasthan and come back to Mumbai figuring, all right, well, by the time we leave,
to be there.
It's got to be here. It isn't. And we're calling customs. She gave us the tracking number. They're like, hey, we dropped it off at customs. We're calling customs.
Been there for like a week and a half, and the customs just wouldn't release it because it's India, and they will not. They just wanted to keep it, I guess.
They wanted money. Anytime I would call customs up, you would hear it ring 7 times. You would hear someone pick it up and just hang it up. It was literally like, pick up, click, hang up. And I just kept calling. So the last 2 days in India, when we were in Mumbai, was spent me trying to get back this laptop. Yeah. And it had everything on it. Nothing was in the cloud at that point. Everything was on your hard drive.
I don't even think Dropbox existed then. Or if it did, we didn't know about it. Everything was on the hard drive.
The early days of location independence.
This computer was like maybe 6 months old. It was not old. It was, $2,000 for this MacBook Pro. So we were just a little bit devastated. And then we have to fly back to the U.S. without a laptop.
So we flew back without the laptop. It was stuck in customs. It continued to be stuck in customs.
For 2 months?
2 months.
Finally, our friend Nick, at least he's a U.S. diplomat, so he went in a few times, and the third time he went in, he just threw his badge on the counter, and he's like, give me this laptop.
Yeah, and the guy kept saying no, give me money, and he just grabbed it and walked out.
I guess the laptop was on a shelf behind,
or the guy pulled it out.
I don't know, he pulled it out, and he was like, is this a laptop or whatever? And Nick just grabbed it and stormed out. But now we're like, okay, how do we get it back to the U.S.? Because we don't want Nick to send it to have to go through customs again, because if it gets to America, of course they'll give it to us. But what if in India they keep it again? So, oh my gosh, how we finally got our laptop back was one of our best friends from college. His parents were going to India in, I think, December, end of November, and they were going to be in Mumbai. And we're like, listen, this is a huge favor, but can you meet our friend Nick in Mumbai?
They didn't know each other. These are not friends that ever knew each other. They're college friends and kids I grew up with.
So our college friends' parents go to Mumbai. They meet up with Nick. They get the laptop, and they physically bring it back home in their luggage on the plane. And then we finally get it back.
So we were a good 3-4 months of the beginning of our location independent journey without our main laptop. Now, when I got home, obviously,
what did you do? Did you just buy
No, I think I was able to do some work on some other on your old laptop, and we had whatever, but it wasn't the main laptop that we had. And then We get the laptop back. My friend's parents.
You're going to throw this in.
This is all part of the story.
Okay, this is part
This
of the story.
is a great way to end the story. My friend's parents bring a laptop with them on a plane. They have gone all the way to India and come back with this laptop. It has been through everything you can imagine.
Yes, it has.
We are sitting at Heather's parents' house.
Over Christmas. So we've had the laptop back maybe for 1 month.
If that. If that. We're sitting there, and Heather has a cup of coffee on the arm of a chair, and she has the laptop in her. We're gonna finish the story.
You can't tell them the timer's up, so you
laptop
you
in her lap.
What happens? You know, the timer's up, Trav. The timer's up.
She spills coffee all over the laptop.
Oh yeah,
and
fried it.
Completely fries it, and it is dead.
So I mean, that laptop was just destined to not be our laptop because we tried.
Was it destined?
I guess,
or was
it was cursed. It was a cursed laptop.
You said you don't make any mistakes. I admitted to 2 big ones. I think it's time to admit to this mistake. You spill coffee all over our laptop.
Yes, I am now very careful with my coffee and electronics as one sits here next to our mixer.
Yeah, as she has a cup of coffee right next to our computer. If you guys are watching this on video, computer and our mixer, which maybe she hasn't spilled yet.
But I haven't spilled that. I mean, that was 6 years ago, and I have not spilled any coffee on any electronics.
There you have it.
Since then.
That is second most memorable location independent experience. Like we said, this is obviously something we'll never forget because there was a comedy of errors throughout this tour. Our very first chance or very first time of really being location independent, we make some very brutal mistakes. But
definitely.
Hey, all you can do is go up from there, which we have. Obviously, the mistakes that we made were not crazy, drastic, bad mistakes in the scheme of things, but I do think that that is a good microcosm of what a location-independent journey is going to look like. You're going to have a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you, especially in your first year, have a year where you don't make any mistakes, well, then call us up because we'd love to talk to you. But it's completely normal to have some setbacks, especially in the first year. And it was still an amazing trip, regardless of those, little mishaps. And that's usually the way it is. Something can be really bad, but there's a lot of good too.
Yeah, you just go with the flow. And if you're listening and you're saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe that is only the second most memorable thing, you're going to want to tune in tomorrow because we end on a high note. Tomorrow's story
high note
is going to be one of our best trips ever and certainly one of the most memorable ones. And something that only could have worked if we were location independent for a few different reasons. So we'll be touching on that tomorrow. We're ending on a high note. And thank you all for listening. If you've been watching these new video podcasts, let us know how you like them.
Yeah, we're actually having so much fun recording them. It kind of adds a different element to the podcast.
A little fresh.
Yeah.
A little fresh. So thanks, you guys, for listening and watching, and we'll chat with you soon.
Bye.